Seems like every local in the valley here has a mountain bike. This sport is really exploding.
I break the law. I ride a legal trail.
And it's getting away from the cops, the cars, the concrete.
Those Baka is the Chinese are down here.
Skiers and snowboarders together on a run, you're looking for trouble. You know, they get on skis and they just think they can overcome the world.
The more you get around, the more you're going to find out.
I like to think that death is out of the question.
The life starts at 40 miles an hour.
You ride the chairlift for 2 or 3 weekends and you have to go like climb hills all week just to be even with God, you know.
Welcome to Mind the Track with Pow Bot and Trail Whisperer. Ramblings from the skin track in winter, single track in summer, celebrating the core lords and fostering the culture of mountain life in the Sierra Nevada and Great Basin. Today is November 13th, 2023, and you're listening to episode number 25. And by the way, thanks for listening. Help spread the word. Leave Mind the Track a rating and review, and subscribe on Apple and Spotify. Got feedback or a core lord we should chat with? Drop us a line like listener Jay McNutt did at mindthetrackpodcast@gmail.com, at mindthetrack on Instagram, or just go to mindthetrack.com, our website, and let us know what you think of the show. We're recording today in TW Studio here on the banks of the Truckee River in beautiful Verdi, Nevada. I am the Trail Whisperer, and sitting beside me, as always, is the Professore of the Pow, the Director of the Powder Intelligence Agency and the United Shredders of Snow, the illustrious Pow Bot.
What's up?
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. I got 1 day on snow.
You got a day on snow?
I got a day on snow.
The White Ribbon of Death? You skied the White Ribbon of Death?
I conquered the White Ribbon of Death.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't help myself.
How was it?
Not as good as the mountain biking.
It's that time of year right now. The mountain biking is better than the skiing.
I'll just say it was fun to go up to Rose and be a part of the froth and feel everybody's excitement and energy.
Yeah.
But the skiing was a White Ribbon of Death.
Yeah.
And there was like, the old guy who's stopping in the middle of the run and kids everywhere. And it was just like, oh my gosh, there's too many people here.
Oh, man.
But it was fun. It was great to get, dust off all the cobwebs and find all the gear and get everything out.
Now, you don't take your hard boots and all that crap, do you? Or do you?
I do not.
You've got like a resort setup.
I am a soft booter at resorts and a hard booter in the backcountry.
Yep.
I'm still transforming.
Yeah.
I haven't gone full hard boot yet.
Yeah.
Maybe I will one day, but no, I'm still riding soft boots at a resort. But yeah, did my first day and then did a 2-sport day. We went to Rose, and then Ben and I went down to Highway 20 corridor and got an awesome mountain bike ride in.
Oh yeah,
it was a ripping brown pow.
Oh, the dirt is so good right now.
Super good.
I've been Florida man for the last week.
How was your Florida man escapade?
It was Florida. It was about what I expected. Let's just say I'm happy to be back and went for
welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, I couldn't be back at a better time. Went for a 2-lapper on Badenaugh Canyon Trail off Babbitt Peak yesterday with you, and that was freaking awesome. What'd you think of that trail?
It's rad and it's raw.
Yeah, isn't it, right? Rad and raw. It kind of lives up to its name.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a bummer that the top section still had some snow on it, because I'm riding my mountain bike on slippery, snowy trail is not my forte. I think I'm more comfortable. I would think I would have been more comfortable actually trying to snowboard down that run with only 4 inches of snow, but I made it down, and then the lower bits, the lower half, I guess. It was more than half.
It was like 2/3 probably.
But it was an absolutely just gorgeous, spectacular day. Oh yeah. I love this time of year with the low sun angle and long shadows and that just sort of quality of light that you get post 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
This time of year is just it's really cool. It's magical to be outdoors.
It is.
In the woods at that time. It was a cool day.
Yeah. Yeah, and so today we had the opportunity to sit down for a really awesome chat. We nerded out, like major nerd out on weather. If you are a listener of this show and you like weather, you're going to love this episode.
Everybody knows who BA is.
BA.
He's kind of like a Tahoe celebrity.
He is a Tahoe celebrity. There was actually a news article in SF Gate that I looked up, and it says Bryan Allegretto, let me see here. It's like the one man in Tahoe who can make the entire region freak out with one word. Oh, no, here. The man who can send Tahoe into full panic mode with just one word, Snowpocalypse. When he says Snowpocalypse, everybody flips because they know the Pow's coming.
I get excited. That's one thing. It baffles me now with his forecasts and how much information there is out there that there's still people that don't know when we go into these huge cycles.
Yeah.
Like, how is someone not aware of the fact that we're going to get 4 feet of snow and a snowpocalypse is here? They're like, oh, I'm just going to come to Tahoe and not know.
It's just the same reason why people rely on their GPS for everything, and they can't I
guess so.
Look at a map and figure out where to go without relying on their phone to tell them where to go, and it's probably the same people who aren't aware of a giant storm coming are the same people who end up trying to take Hennis Pass to Truckee when the I-80's closed in a snowstorm, and they end up dead in the forest because their car got stuck in the snow.
They really need to just subscribe to OpenSnow.
Yes.
And then they'll know.
So that should be the tagline. Subscribe to OpenSnow, then you'll know.
And then you'll know. That's good.
Yeah, I mean,
and you won't be stuck in the snow.
Then you,
if you subscribe to OpenSnow,
you'll know when to go when you subscribe to OpenSnow. I mean, there's a lot of jingle fun you could have with that.
Know when to go and when not to go. Yeah, I don't know. It was funny you mentioned that. Initially you was sort of bucked at like, oh, I don't want to subscribe and give him $29.99. But then after hearing his story of like, he just poured his heart and soul into forecasting for years. Yeah. He said 2010 he started forecasting. Those guys got OpenSnow off the ground in 2018. Yeah. So he did it for free, which I was a benefactor of. I started reading that blog early, Tahoe Weather Discussion, very early. And then he, the first time in many years, he never paid himself. So, subscribe away.
We didn't get to dive into it in the interview, but what's your kind of background with weather? Like, when did you first kind of fall in love with weather?
Mine's kind of a weird one because I grew up on the shores of Lake Michigan. Yeah. And there would be huge thunderstorms that would come across the lake. Yeah. And I was always just sort of enthralled by those, and I would run outdoors and come greet them, and my mom's yelling at me to get back in the house, and I just wanted to feel that energy coming across the lake and see the thunder and lightning coming. And then for me, it was eventually associated then right around that same age with surfing, because I grew up surfing short period wind swell in Lake Michigan right in front of my house. Yeah. And there wasn't weather forecasting back then that I was a part of. I think I started getting into surfing when I was like in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. Right around then. And it was more of like just being tuned into my environment. Like, I would go to bed at night, and then the front would come through and the winds would kick up, especially in like August, September, October. And there would be these big wind events. And I knew then that next morning that there was going to be, I would want to go out and play in the water all day and go surfing. Mm-hmm. And so I would go to bed and just like listening to, I could hear the lake. So where I grew up, I was blessed to be able to be right above Lake Michigan. And I don't know, I just like got really tuned into the weather patterns because it would equate to fun for me. Yeah. Like if it was blowing all night, I knew I was going to wake up the next morning, and I would hear that sound all night, and then get my stuff together, have some breakfast, and go surf for 6 hours and try to catch a crappy wave in Lake Michigan. But I loved it. That was kind of like, I got really tuned into weather that way. And then I guess later on, it's fully infatuated with powder. Yeah. Pow Bot. And, without watching weather, you just don't know when it's going to snow and where to go and where to chase it. It's interesting. I didn't get the chance to go into it too deep with him about how his forecasting has changed the game a little bit. But when I first started chasing snow, I didn't actually have television. So I used to go over to my then girlfriend's, but now wife's house in Telluride just to be able to watch the Weather Channel. But I really relied on friends that were in other locations in North America that would just call me.
Yeah.
And they like
phone tree,
the phone tree,
powder phone tree.
Yeah. It was just like, Randy Evans or, some of my friends in the Wasatch and some of those old snowboard legends would just call me and be like, dude, get in your car. And I lived in Colorado for a bunch of years. So I would get the call and just be like, be here tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Or friends from Jackson would call and be like, hey, get in your car and get up here. And the powder phone tree would get me to go places.
Yeah.
But it's funny how it's changed. And then, then the internet came along and we all started going down that rabbit hole and looking at all the maps and models and everything. So I guess that's kind of how I got into the snow forecasting thing. I don't know. I don't do my own forecasting. I just let them all do it. And then I think I mentioned it a little bit, but I really just look at the trends. Like, what is the trend over the next week or two?
Yeah.
Like when you read his forecast today, what's it telling you to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's telling me I'm going to go.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like literally today?
Yeah, like literally today.
Literally today, keep mountain biking.
Yeah. Right. That's it. Like I read that forecast and I was like, okay, well, two things. One, I'm going to keep mountain biking. And two, I'm looking at maybe I might go on a road trip to chase some pow post Thanksgiving because I can get my ducks in a row and get my life organized and go do that. Yeah. But I love the long range forecast, not for the inaccuracy or accuracy of it, but really just sort of what is the trend of it? Like what's it telling me to do like in a week?
Yeah. Yeah,
that's pretty easy to figure out.
It's great because, like, for me, I don't mind a slow start as long as we have a good finish, and I've got plenty of trail stuff I'd like to do. So if we don't get snow for a few more weeks, I'm okay with it.
Keep building trail.
Keep enjoying this like long fall that we have going on because it's been all time for dirt and riding. But the snow will come eventually, hopefully. But yeah, this has been a fun episode. I think I don't have much regrets in life. I think I've pretty much done everything I've wanted to do. But one thing that I think I maybe missed out on that I should have done was and we mentioned it in the episode, was the TV weatherman thing or the weatherman thing. Like I had a meteorology minor in college and been obsessed with weather my whole life. And I love it. And, I think I should have focused on that more maybe, and maybe just gone and worked at that TV station in Terre Haute, Indiana, wearing a suit and being on TV talking about weather. Because I think I would have taken it somewhere, but it's okay. I don't have any regrets about, what I've decided to do instead, but,
you can do it. You can live your dream now, bud.
I know.
Can just talk about weather on this podcast.
Exactly.
And we're going to put it on YouTube now. So
yeah, we're now finally, Pow Bot's got this really cool camera set up and, we're going to give this thing a try, finally get ourselves on the YouTube here because, we're missing out on discovering new listeners, because I guess that's the number one way people find podcasts these days is on the old YouTube. So here we are.
Yeah, you just be the weather forecaster for all the mountain bikers out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll do it for all the skiers.
That's right.
Well, actually, Brian can do it.
Yeah. So anyway, anything else you want to add before we jump into this episode, this interview with Brian?
I think so. It was just awesome to have him on the show. Total legend.
Total.
Like legend. He's an interesting character because there's so many people that have been reading him that we all feel like that we intimately know him and everything, but he tried to stay anonymous for a bunch of years as just BA. But it's great to have him on, and it was really cool to hear his insights on some of the patterns that's happening and getting us all fired up for this winter.
Yeah, absolutely. He is a legend, and it's awesome that I haven't really gotten to know much about him because he seems to keep a pretty low profile and not focus on himself and more focus on the weather and
he's dedicated to the weather.
Yeah, and so it was great to get some more insight from him. So without further ado, here is our interview with Bryan Allegretto, also known as BA from OpenSnow Tahoe. I hope you enjoy this weather-heavy podcast episode of Mind the Track. All right, we're here with Bryan Allegretto, weather forecaster for OpenSnow Tahoe. Bryan, what is your title, or what would you like if you were to if someone were to come up to you on the street and say, "Hey, BA, what do you do?" What would you tell them?
On the street, usually snow forecaster.
Snow forecaster?
Because that's what I'm honed in on, just snow, mostly.
Okay.
Forecasting snow. We touch up on all weather. We'll talk about the rain and the sun, but I just say snow forecaster. Just makes the most sense. And most of our forecasting is done in the winter, and it's around snow. I got a lot of titles now at OpenSnow, doing the analytics and podcasting and media and different things, but snow forecaster is the easy one to say.
But you're just aware of all the hats, pretty much, it seems.
Yeah, we're still a small team, so we wear a lot of hats.
And are you a part owner of OpenSnow?
Yeah, I originally started at the very beginning in with Joel and Andrew.
Okay.
And so the three of us were there when it launched, and the three of us were each owners of the company in different percentage shares. Yeah. And with Joel controlling interest and founder of the company and CEO now, or always been the CEO. But yeah, and so I actually sold a chunk of my shares back to Joel a couple of years ago, but I still have a minority ownership in the company. I just like being invested in the company because I'm passionate about it, and I want to be tied to our success, for as long as we're doing this.
What was the original idea for OpenSnow? When was it founded, and what was the purpose of being founded?
It was accidentally on purpose, I feel like. Joel and I both had a business and weather background in our schooling. I was more heavy on the business side of it, where Joel was more heavy on the meteorology side of his background. And so we're both entrepreneurial minded and love weather and love skiing and love snow. We both grew up outside of Philadelphia. He was on the north side, I was on the southeast side. And so we grew up in the same region, loving snow, living in an area where it hardly snows, skiing little tiny ski areas. And
where'd you ski? Because I grew up in
your home resort?
Where'd you grow up? Where'd you ski in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania?
Mostly at like Camelback, Jack Frost, Big Boulder.
Camelback. Yeah. That's where I first skied. My first time ever skiing was at Camelback.
Really?
In the Poconos, dude.
Yeah. And I was actually a snowboard instructor up there for a season. Best job I ever had. I think I made $6 an hour, and it was still the best job I ever had.
Heck yeah. That's so funny. So you guys grew up together?
We didn't know each other, no.
Oh, you didn't know?
No.
But you grew up near each other?
Not too far away. He's 45 minutes one way from Philly, and I'm 45 minutes the other way.
Okay.
Growing up, he's 1 year younger than me. So we're almost on this kind of similar trajectory, skiing these little Pocono mountains, in love with the weather.
Was skiing your initial fascination with weather, or was it something else?
No, it was the snow part of it.
It was snow.
Because I grew up, and surfing was my sport. Skateboarding is what we did when there was no waves. And we didn't have access to the mountains. My parents weren't big skiers, so we didn't go on ski trips. So getting my oldest friend in high school, got his license first. We all piled in the back of his old station wagon, and he drug us up to Camelback. And then this local surf shop started running, like Thursdays, they'd run a trip up to Hunter Mountain, 4 hours each way. So you got to catch the bus at 4 a.m. And so we cut school and go sit out there at 4 a.m, catch this bus. It was like $50 included your lift ticket up and back. And so we'd be gone for the day and get back at like 8 o'clock at night, and it was the best thing ever. And so Joel and I are both dreaming about like, hey, one day we want to go where it actually snows and where there's actual mountains. So he went to school for meteorology. He was at Penn State. I was going to Kane. And so then I ended up switching to business after a couple of years. And I wanted to work in the ski industry. And I was like, how am I going to use meteorology to live in the mountains and work in the ski industry? Joel ends up going to grad school out in Boulder so he can get out to the Rockies. And so he goes out there and he starts studying a little bit more into the business side as well when he's getting his master's. So then he gets a job out of school working for a company doing weather. And I get out of school and take a job in the ski industry. It was my dream. I got a job with Booth Creek in Truckee, California, which is this huge cultural shift moving across the country right out of college.
Right out of college? Right
out of college, yeah. So I move over there. Joel and I didn't know each other. So we both start working at these jobs, and we're both forecasting for ourselves, like chasing powder, in love with snow like we were back on the East Coast. And people in our offices and our friends were like, well, you're pretty good. Like you said, it was going to snow next Thursday, and it did snow next Thursday, and you're specific about chasing it for your skiing, and I want to chase it for my skiing, and nobody was doing snow blogging really that much back then. So
what year was this?
2006.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And how many people were like sort of originally getting those? Like you said that it was originally an email that you were blogging.
Yeah, I was in a business office at Booth Creek, so they were more on the accounting and business decision side for all these ski areas, and I was just chit-chatting at the coffee machine, like, hey, you guys, what do you think about the storm next Friday? Like, I didn't see that in the forecast. I'm like, oh, I'm seeing it. And so all of a sudden, like, my boss comes to my desk, like, hey, we're having a business meeting. Can you come in and just tell us what your thoughts were for next week's weather? I want you to tell these guys. And they're like, well, can you send that in an email? And then, like, all of a sudden the whole office, then upstairs, downstairs, and then the people at the ski resorts we run started hearing about it, and my friends. So I don't know, it must have been a couple hundred people. And Joel has a number, I can't remember what it was, but it was in the hundreds. And then we're both, like, at the same time still don't know each other. This email list is getting kind of long and cumbersome to keep adding people and subtracting people or whatever. So Blogspot was kind of becoming a thing. And I heard people talk about blogs, but I never read one. I didn't know what one was. It was just kind of this word I was starting to hear, like, oh, I'm on a blog, or I'm starting a blog, or I'm reading this blog. Yeah. And so I went to blogspot.com. I'm like, oh, I can start a blog. And so the director of marketing for Northstar came over, and she worked out of our building, and she was like, you should take this little column you're doing on the Blogspot, and we're going to connect it to the weather page at Northstar and see what people think, because nobody had tried that yet in California ski areas. Like, nobody was connecting a weatherman blogging every morning to their weather page.
Yeah, people just woke up and called in the snow phone.
Yeah.
Like, you remember
or
the
watch
days...
the news.
Or watch the news. You remember the days of having to call, like, Palisades had Eric T?
Yeah, I remember calling snow lines.
Eric T here with the Squaw Valley Snow Report, and we're running these lists, and it snowed this much. Like, that's kind of where it... Like,
I'm old enough to remember there was no internet, and so even for surfing, which was our big sport when I was growing up in high school, we called the surf shop. Hey, is there any waves?
Yeah.
Like, because the guy would literally get on his skateboard, skate down a couple blocks, look at the surf, come back, and then answer the phone all morning and tell everyone what the size of the waves he saw.
So one of my two bookmarked websites at the beginning of You've Got Mail, like that, the beginning of dial-up. One website was Mullets Galore.
Oh, I love Mullets Galore.
Do you remember Mullets Galore?
No. Dude, the skullet. Oh yeah, they had all different kinds
of...
The
mini trucker mullet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was really... Look at it. Unfortunately, it got taken off the internet, but there's somebody that started like an archive of all those random old websites, so you can find information. But I also started reading Howard Sheckter. Yeah, the Dweeb Report, and that was all the way back when I was living in Colorado.
Okay.
In Telluride, and I started reading Howard's blogs, like it was maybe like late 90s, and I was extrapolating what he was saying for Mammoth and then applying it to what would happen for me downstream. But like there was such a void of information back in the day for people.
And I started reading him, so I was chasing when I got here. People said check him out, so I checked him out. I was reading his stuff, and same thing. I had to extrapolate, but I was able to learn a lot from what he was saying as far as what patterns affected. I
was going to ask you that. Did you learn a lot from reading his blog?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
I did too. I learned a lot from you, but...
We ended up hiring him a few seasons ago. He actually, for one season, wrote the Mammoth forecast, because I was writing 4 forecasts every morning for all over California, different zones. And I said to Joel, I was like, you want these forecasts out by 8 a.m. and writing 4 different ones for 4 different zones is like getting up at 2 a.m. Like, this is too much.
Curious about that. So you write your forecast in the morning, not the night before.
Right. Wow. So we get up early, 4 in the morning usually, and then we have them out by 8. And I'm writing 3 right now, and I was writing like 4 or 5. And I said, this is too much. So Joel reached out to Howard, and he was interested to come on for a season. And then we ended up hiring Mike Karakin, who actually lives here in Reno, and
he's the Mammoth guy now.
He's Southern California and Mammoth. Okay. And he's a master's student from UNR meteorology school. So he's young, but has a background as learning his way through the business now and forecasting for us, and he works for DRI. And but Howard, Mike was just down in Mammoth. He's a big hiker. He's bagging every peak in the Sierra. Like, he's done 100 and some peaks so far, and he's going to do them all, but he spends a lot of time in Mammoth. And when he came back this week and said Howard is not doing well, he's getting sick.
I heard that. Yeah.
So that's going to be a huge loss for the weather and ski community. You know, I mean, I think he's in his 70s now too, so he's getting up there, but it's something that we could lose here in the next few years possibly. So Now, and I'm starting to already feel old because I've been doing this for 17 seasons in Tahoe, and I'm like, man, my beard's turning gray. My kids are teenagers, and I'm like, and now Howard's in his 70s, and I'm like, oh.
What was your original blog called then?
Original one was northstarsnow.blogspot.com. Okay. And then I added Sierra-at-Tahoe, and then people were clamoring for me to cover all the ski areas, so I did Tahoe Weather Discussion in 2009.
Okay, that's right.
3 years later. And I did that for a season 9-10, and then I did it for 10-11, which was a huge season, and my readership exploded. And that's when the phone rang, and Joel's like, hey.
That was the connection.
Yeah, he's like, I'm hearing about you from a lot of people in Colorado that moved here from Tahoe or go to Tahoe. It sounds like we're doing the same thing, because he was writing ColoradoPowderForecast.com, and he was getting a big following. So we're still on the same trajectory.
Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting.
How did you know how many people were visiting your blog back then in 10-11, like on a daily basis? Mm-hmm. What can you share those numbers?
So ski season, let's say it's 150 days, and it was about over 1 million page views. So it had to be whatever that division is.
I suck at math.
10,000 a day or something, right?
So substantial.
I mean, that's substantial for a guy who just like was talking about it at the coffee pot at the office, and somebody said throw it on a Blogspot account.
2009,
most people didn't even know what the hell a blog was. Yeah, totally.
That's wild.
And so it's partly or mostly a lot of it's hard work. But what do they say for success? Like
the harder you work,
but there's there's also a little bit of luck.
The luckier you get. The harder you work, the luckier you get.
And so, I obviously, director of marketing coming over and saying, hey, I'm going to connect you to Northstar's page. Like, obviously, my name got picked up. But I only used my initials because I didn't want anyone to know my name, because I don't like that kind of notoriety kind of thing.
Right.
I'm pretty private. So I'm like,
yeah, you seem like you've been pretty private the whole time.
BA. And so nobody knew who I was. So that's why they had a contest at the local radio station to figure out who I was, because it was 3 years of BA. And BA was never a nickname of mine. It was just my initials. But it became a nickname.
Yeah, all I think
there's all kinds of nicknames for you.
My whole life, all I knew from BA was BA Baracus from the A team. That was BA until you came along. Yeah. I'm like, no, the new BA is the weather guy, the snow forecaster guy.
So that was all about just not nobody knowing who I was, and so that kind of got blown up. And but yeah, so if Northstar hadn't connected me and I got those eyeballs, and then what I would do at the end of the season was they would close on April 15th. Well, it would still keep snowing until May, June. Yeah. And so they never said a word about it, but I put right at the last blog, I put, hey, thanks for a great season. By the way, if you want to see forecasts after the season and preseason next year, go to TahoeWeatherDiscussion.com. And that link just sat on their website, on their weather page for the next 6 months until I picked it back up. Mm-hmm. And then on Sierra's. And so I started funneling traffic to Tahoe Weather Discussion by 2010. And they didn't seem to care, and I'm like, cool. Like, so it was a little bit of luck, because you can be a meteorologist and be like, I want to start a blog, but then building those original eyeballs is the hard part.
Right.
And so I got that little bit of luck by working for the ski resort management company that owned these ski resorts.
Right. And then when did OpenSnow come to life?
So that was the 10-11 season. Joel started reaching out to me.
He had already started OpenSnow?
No, it was in development.
So it was a partnership between the two of you that was the beginning of it.
Right. So he originally was going to partner with Andrew. Andrew was building the site at the buy-in. It was Joel's idea. He bootstrapped some. I think his dad gave him a loan, and then he. The company's always been kind of bootstrapped. We just put our own money in, but Andrew came in and bought his way in by building out the website, and he was meteorology background also, and had some coding background, web development background. And so he came in, and Joel and him, I forget exactly how they met, but they had met some sort of meteorology group in Boulder, and then they started working together on building this website in the 10-11 season. And so they were going to launch it in the fall of 2011. So Joel had been talking to me. 10-11 was my blog's exploding, and he's like, hey, you want to join us? And he's like, well, we don't really have any money to buy, Tahoe Weather Discussion, but you can come join us, and we'll buy you with sweat equity and shares. And I'm like, and my friends are like, don't do it. You're doing your own thing. Just keep doing your own thing. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm working a full-time job, and I'm starting to have kids, and like, I don't have time to go chase advertising and to make this a real thing.
Right.
Like I was already starting to get bogged down because people were calling me in 10, 11 season, like real estate agents and small businesses in Truckee, and they were like, hey, we want to put an ad on your site. I'm like, how do I do that? I don't even know how to code that well. And just use a Blogspot. And so I started a WordPress page, and I started teaching myself how to do these little square 1x1 squares for ads, and I was charging like $50 a month for them. And so I didn't want to deal with all that. I just wanted to ski and chase powder and then write about it in the morning. And I was like, this guy's telling me he's going to build the website. He's going to deal with the advertisers. I just have to write. And then I'm teaming up with them so it could grow way faster, the three of us together. Meanwhile, that 10-11 season, before Joel offered that to me, I had already had the idea brewing in my head because of the success of Tahoe Weather Discussion. I had gone out and bought VermontWeatherDiscussion.com and like ColoradoWeatherDiscussion.com. I started buying these. Oh,
dang, you're sitting on URLs now.
And I started buying them. And
That's a good business.
I said I could forecast Northeast. I grew up there.
Yeah.
So I was like, that third season, I was thinking about doing Northstar, Sierra-at-Tahoe Weather Discussion, Vermont Weather Discussion, and then I actually had drawn up some plans for like a map of the United States, and it would click that ski state, and it would go to that blog. And then so when Joel came in, I was like, well, this is gonna be a lot easier. I'm like,
it's kind of what they're doing.
He's already building with Andrew what my vision is. And so, and they're offering me to buy in as a partner with, not going to cost me anything, not going to cost them anything. I'm just going to bring my audience over and redirect link for the 11-12 season. Well, what happened in 11-12? We went from one of the snowiest seasons ever to one of the driest. And so everyone came out and was like, OpenSnow's a curse ever since you went. Ever since you went.
They blame that switch.
Yeah, they're like, you went corporate. I'm like, corporate? It says Joel like and Andrew, they're basically like barely getting by. And I joined them, and I'm working 2-3 jobs. My wife's working nights and weekends. I'm like, we're not. Well, there's no corporate here.
Oh my gosh. And we went into like a 4-year drought too.
And that was the worst seasons for the next few years as OpenSnow's coming off the ground and Tahoe's bone dry.
There's nothing.
We had nothing.
But I did learn during that dry spell that there was an initial dip in viewership when it's not going to snow for a couple weeks, and then it goes back up because people start getting desperate, and your traffic will actually go up higher and higher the longer the dry spell goes.
Yeah, they read all about the ridiculously resilient high pressure, ridge.
RRR,
How long is it going to last?
Triple R.
And is that where because you had every year, isn't it your deal where like you grow your beard until there's like a 3-foot snowfall or something like that?
That was the drought thing I did.
Yeah, what was that all about?
And I did it 16, 17. I think it was the first season I did it because we were coming off all those droughts. And I said, okay. It was just for fun because I would like having a beard and growing it out.
Do you usually have a beard?
Yeah, I usually grow out a beard in the winter. And so I was like, I'm just going to let it go. And I'm not going to shave it. I just told my friend I'm not going to shave it until it snows 2 feet in 24 hours. Just kind of like a playoff beard.
Yeah.
And I just started mentioning that on my blog, and people loved it. So then we went into more dry season. So 16, 17 got a ton of snow, right? And so I shaved it right away. And people are like, is it coming back? I'm like, no, it won't stop snowing. It's snowing 2 feet overnight, like
every day.
Like every week, yeah. So then in 17, 18, we went back into these dry spells for a few years. And so then it started to become a thing. Like I think the second season I was growing that beard all the way till February.
Is down to your beard?
Because we didn't get any snow till February of 18. And so my beard got really big, and that's the year I started doing a ton of social media, and I was doing live Instagram forecasts before the storms. And this is when OpenSnow, like, we still didn't really have marketing budget, and so like I'm trying to help grow the company, and I'm so out there as much as I could, getting on social media, and I had a big Facebook following, big Twitter following, and then I was building this Instagram following and doing live forecasting and anything I could to try to get clicks and views to send them back, because we were an advertising company still. And so clicks meant everything, and getting eyeballs back to our page meant everything. And so I was doing all these things, but people saw my videos in the 17-8 season. My beard was getting longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. And then I was like, I'm going to shave it when we get 2 feet in 24 hours. And then everyone said, is a beard shaver storm coming? Is a beard shaver storm coming? And so so now that we have a big enough following, like phrases start catching on, and then people would blame us for it, like it's a beard shaver.
The community you created is unique, and
totally.
Like I will say that the original blog, the Tahoe Weather Discussion blog, like the old comments section was gold. Like I used to go there I admit to being a lurker. Like I would read your blog, and then I would loved living in that comment section, and I was bummed that that eventually went away.
So we can release some secrets tonight.
Like why did did that go away?
Well, okay, so I can tell you why I went away, and I can tell you that
I'm sure
a little secret
I'm
right
sure
now.
You had to moderate
on
it,
this podcast. I can't post this on our website yet. Joel hasn't allowed it.
We're gonna get some hot news.
We have a forum that's in testing phase that's almost done and ready to go for this season.
Oh my gosh, so good.
It's basically like kind of like an old school Twitter OpenSnow version. Basically it's going to be this forum, and it's almost like you're just posting tweets like the way they used to flow before all the videos and all that other stuff. So it's just going to be, and there's going to be all these different discussion forums like, backcountry or Tahoe, or there'll be a specific one for each. So there's going to be one that's going to be like the Tahoe Daily Snow forum. And so you can comment on what I've written that day in that forum. So we're building out our own forum.
Should I drive up 80 today?
Yeah, we can drive an I-80 driving forum. Yeah. So,
man.
But the reason it went away, and the reason it's taking so long to launch the forum, and we didn't just do it right away, is because the abuse side of it.
Oh yeah, sure. You have to moderate it. Like I'm a huge. Do you ever go to Beach Grit? Mm-mm. So the couple of podcasters have. There's a great podcast called Beach Grit, or they call it The Grit. But he has a website called Beach Grit, and it's a surf podcast and a surf site, and their comment section is just gold. And they actually have to have someone whose name is Negatron as his tagline, and then Negatron, not Negatron, but he has to regulate it, and make sure that when bad things come in, that he kicks it out, or bad people. It takes work.
It does. We've been programming this bot with all these phrases to catch, and that's so much fun because
I hate to say it, but you might actually need a person to moderate it. But
then that's the thing. We didn't have enough people back then. We had such a small team. It was 4 or 5 of us up until a few years ago. That's why we got rid of it. Like we can't keep up, and people were spamming it constantly. And they're posting links to their own businesses, and then we have weather.
You can't have.
We have people starting weather companies like ours and being like, "Here's a link to my page.
Yeah, check out my forecast.
Yeah, check out our forecast site. It's just like OpenSnow. We're like, well, what are we doing? We're just advertising for free for all these other sites. So
I recommend you to check out Beach Grit's comment. Okay. Just check out that website, and he it's like voyeurism, surf journalism. He just writes these wildly funny stories and makes fun of professional surfers. And there's a whole bunch of humor in it.
Yeah.
But there's people from Australia, there's people from California, there's commenters from all around the world, and they have an incredible community that lives on that site, and it's freaking gold. Like I'm excited for this.
Yeah,
it's cool.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, and so the testing phase has been so much fun because what we've been doing, what Evan and I basically have been doing, because Evan and I are more the lighthearted clowns of the company. Like we still have a scientific mind, but like a lot of people are like, it's a very scientific company. It's all developers and meteorologists and scientists, and so Evan and I are kind of the clowns of the company, where we're always the ones making jokes and then looking at Joel to see how he reacts, just to make sure like we're not going to get in trouble or something, so maybe push that one too far. But so Evan and I had this brilliant idea without even telling each other that like as soon as they launched the testing site for this new forum we're going to launch, Evan and I start making up all these fake profiles of like people that used to be famous in the comments of like the Colorado, Utah, and Tahoe.
Yeah, yes.
And so I made a Music Man profile, and I started writing a poem about skiing and trolls and twirling my poles and all this stuff. Do you remember the Music Man guy? He used to write these poems about, and the guy was probably on acid as he wrote each of these posts, but he became kind of famous.
I do kind of remember that, dude.
So I tried to like imitate one of his posts, and then I did another profile, and I started saying like, hey, OpenSnow, you guys suck. You don't know how to forecast. Like, weather service is way better than you. And like, all the really mean things people post over the years. But what we're trying to do is a purpose behind it, though, is our new bot that we've created to catch all the stuff we don't want on there, catching these phrases like you suck and, curse words. Yeah. And so we're in there cursing and like doing all these things that we're like not HR worthy, like, and just testing to see if it's catching all these things we don't want on the forum so we can keep it centered on where we want it, throwing out political things and just making sure all these little keywords are getting caught by the system. And so Evan was made like a character of this guy that used to harass the crap out of Joel on his comment section, and he gets on there, he's like, hello Joel, I'm back. And
is there in today's world of Twitter and Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, is there a market for the old school kind of forum that used to be kind of the social media center of the internet for the longest time?
I don't know. Everyone, like you guys said a few minutes ago, is like, hey, that was gold, those comment sections. section, and we're like, people still complain they're gone, and
it keeps people engaged.
The comments,
it doesn't make us any money. We're just putting it there because everyone's saying they want it, and if they don't use it, it's like, oh well, whoops. Like,
so is it comments after your forecast or actual like a forum style?
I'm not sure exactly. Probably the bottom of the forecast there'll be a link to the forum.
Okay,
but it's going to be its own site. And so it's going to be almost like its own site, like X, Twitter. It's going to be on it. So you're going to link over to the OpenSnow forum, and it's going to kind of function like that, where there's all these.
So kind of like TGR forums.
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of in different regions and all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
But it's going to be. I mean, the way that Sam's developed it, it flows really nicely. It looks like you're posting a tweet, like the way it flows down through, and then you can comment on each person's post, and you can post pictures and videos. And
there'll be such good humor in there and stuff.
And then the bot is going to keep everyone from getting crazy. And so Joel's okay with it because we have this bot that's going to like make sure.
It's not going to be it's not the Pow Bot, is it?
That's what we should call it.
Dude, the Pow Bot's going to be all up in that forum.
I'll start a forum that says, is it going to be a shit show tomorrow in Tahoe?
Yeah, he's the shit show forecaster.
I wanted to forecast the shit shows this winter. Like the days when it's like, just go to the independent resort or go backcountry skiing or maybe go.
As long as you call SH asterisk T, you should be good. But people get caught and erased by the bot. But yeah, that kind of stuff. As long as everyone's,
I'll call it a junk show.
Yeah, as long as everyone's staying within their lane, it should be a lot of fun to get on there, and because it potentially better than the comments because there's so many subjects and so easy to get into all these discussions.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about it, but this is a secret for this podcast. Like, we haven't told anyone until right now that this is coming up the road, so don't worry, it's coming.
You heard it here first. Yeah. This is the first thing that anybody's ever heard first on Mind the Track. So we're coming up in the world a little. We're
doing legit
scoop.
media.
We're getting scoop here.
Yeah. And I told you guys when we were talking earlier, we're also launching our first ski film. So.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
So I can't tell you too much yet because we want it to be a big surprise, but it's actually going to be more of a snowboard film, which is surprising because our CEO is a skier and most people are big skiers in the company. I'm a snowboarder, but so we had the guy actually works for us, who is kind of it's kind of a humorous documentary type thing around chasing powder and but just tracking one of our employees, our seasonal forecasters, as he goes around and travels and snowboards different places. But it was the first time we always just focused on forecasting and building the site better with more tools for chasing snow and forecasting weather.
Yeah.
We've never put a lot of money in the marketing and definitely never any money into like making a ski film. So this is the first time we spent a little bit of money to like, hey, let's pay someone to produce a ski film for us using our own content. So
that'll be fun.
It's super exciting. It should be out in the next couple of weeks, and then we could talk about it more later if we end up ever talking again about it. But yeah, it's going to be super fun, so look for that too.
Heck yeah. Well, let's dive into, we've gotten some good background on you and where you've come through. Tom and I are huge weather nerds. I grew up, it's funny, man, your trajectory was rather similar to mine growing up. So I grew up in Pittsburgh on the opposite side of Pennsylvania, and I skied Seven Springs and Blue Knob and up in upstate New York, and I was obsessed with weather as a kid. I think the 3 most watched channels in the house was Nickelodeon, MTV, and the Weather Channel. And I, watched the forecast every day, and then I ended up going to college in Indiana and had a minor in meteorology. I was going to be a weatherman, TV weatherman. That was my trajectory. And then until I realized, wait a minute, I'm going to have to wear a suit every day and be in front of a screen in BFE, Indiana, like Terre Haute, Indiana. I don't want to do that, man. So then I picked a different trajectory in life, but I've always kept weather, I've been obsessed with it my whole life. And so when I found OpenSnow, I was always reading like the NWS forecasts, and then, I found your it's not a blog. Is it? You call it a blog anymore? It's now basically a snow forecast.
Yeah,
right?
I still call it a blog, but
you still call it a blog. Okay, cool. Well, I'll just call it a blog. So I found your blog, and I was like, man, this guy's pretty good. Like, he's pretty damn accurate. Like, I'll go out, I'll read the NWS forecast. I'll read your forecast. Then I'll go out and and Tom and I debated this a little bit, but I feel like on the whole, you're way more accurate than the NWS forecast for this region. So case in point, just this alleged storm that's supposed to have been coming, like in the long range, 4 or 5 days ago, National Weather Service was saying feet of snow, significant storm on the way, and you called it. You was like, don't buy into the hype train. I've seen this before. This is probably what's going to happen. And sure as rain, dude, you were right. And so my question to you is, how do you outperform NWS on a seemingly regular basis?
So I try to figure that out for myself. And they have actually offered me jobs when I was younger, when I first started Tahoe Weather Discussion. Yeah. I remember the director down there calling me up like, hey, what do you think about coming on interning for us and like coming to work for us? And
at the Reno office for NWS?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, there was a reason why I didn't go that route. Like, I don't want to work the night shift.
Kind of like why I didn't want to be in Terre Haute.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't want to work shift work. And nothing against it, but that wasn't what I saw for myself, was working shift work on the overnight in a cubicle in front of the computer all night. I wanted to be working in a ski area where I could go out and ski and work on the mountain and be in that culture, and still somehow incorporate weather and storm chasing. For me, it was love of snow. Yeah. Love of skiing and storm chasing over weather. Mm-hmm. And hurricanes too. I mean, nor'easters, hurricanes.
I was a tornado chaser.
Tornadoes, any wild weather.
Hell yeah.
But snow was my obsession. Yeah. So I try to think, because I don't know that I'm going to beat other forecasters on their forecast, and I don't always beat other forecasters.
And you're not? Are you trying to? You're not really trying to, right? You're just trying to be as accurate as possible.
I am extremely hard on myself.
You are. You are very.
I do not like to be wrong. Maybe a little bit of that. I mean, most of that is me being type A and hard on myself my whole life and with everything I do. Yeah. But a little bit of that is too with the abuse I took, because the reason I want to be BA, and I'm a private person and I don't want to be criticized. I wasn't the kind of person that's like, hey, I'm going to be a rock star and go out stage and be criticized by everyone on social media. That's not me. So I don't want to throw myself to that kind of criticism. But then when Joel was like, all right, we're going to put our names on here and our pictures, and then there's blogs that are trolling us, the comments are trolling us, social media will start trolling you, and so you start getting mean emails, mean comments, and you start taking it personal too. So it was like, oh, that's really hurtful. Like, I wasn't trying to ruin your ski vacation. I wasn't trying to overly hype it. I mean, the big lie was like, we overstate snowfall because ski resorts will then advertise with us and we'll make more money. I'm like, that's the opposite, inverse of how it works. Right. They advertise because we have a lot of followers. We have a lot of followers because we're accurate. If we were wrong all the time, nobody would come to our site and we would get no advertising.
Well, being a weatherman is the only occupation where you can be wrong more than half the time and still have a job. So anyway, but you're way more than that.
So anyway, I try to figure that out. And what I've come up with, the only thing I can come up with, just from 17 years of experience now here locally, is like a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of guys who are on the forecast discussion using it as a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. So they're coming out of school, get a job at the National Weather Service, do the overnight, and write the forecast discussion. And so when you're coming out of school, you don't have 15, 20 years experience living in the Sierra, verifying every storm, watching every model run every single day, and from experience being like, okay, last time I saw that, this is what ended up happening, and it threw everybody off. They're coming out of school, and then they're very heavily reliant on the models. Right. And so I'm also really into blogs for weather, and I read a lot of guys that are old and do old school forecasting before there was high-tech computer modeling, and I read these wavelength theories, and I read these pattern theories that they have, and stratospheric temperature theories and ocean temperature theories. I'm like, these guys are trying to understand. These are the guys building the models. Yeah. These are the guys that were forecasting before there was models, and these are the guys who are also doing a little better than the models because they're like, this doesn't make sense. The model doesn't understand that the feedback issue here. It really struggles with this scenario. And so I'm like, I got to be like that for here. I can't just if I just spit out the model run, I'll be like your iPhone where the forecast changes every 6 hours every time the model reruns.
Right.
Sunny, snowy, sunny, snowy, sunny, snowy. And I'm like, I can't do that for my readers. So anyway, I dabble in a lot of that, but a lot of it's theoretical. And so a lot of forecasters just stick to more factual. Like, here's a computer model that says this, so I'm going with that. And if you say I was wrong, I blame it on the model. Right. I can't go down too many rabbit holes of theories because weather's so complex. The atmosphere and fluid movement is so complex that these theories aren't. None of these theories are perfect, and they're wrong sometimes. And then I can't just blame I was reading this guy from Kansas that was blogging about this theory.
This old guy used to read, man. It's his fault.
It's all his fault. They're gonna be like, what kind of crack pot are you? You know. So anyway, I think there's some of that. And because you just very heavily reliant on, let's stick to the model data. Let's try to make the models better and stick to the model data. Let's not obscure and go down these other theoretical holes. And some of them I've been able to look at and compare it against Tahoe's weather and be like, okay, well, this theory kind of ties in, like these things kind of happen. But also, I think a lot of times when you're working for like a local weather office, you're working your 8, 9 hour, 10 hour, however long shift, 5 days a week. And then you're like, oh gosh, like everyone else, it's the weekend.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm off for the next 12 hours. I'm going to go sleep. I'm going to go mow my lawn and go play with my kids and go do whatever. I'm snow and ski obsessed. So before I was paid to, was working my butt off to write these forecasts for free from the obsession of it. So I'm looking at forecast models, hundreds of them, dozens of runs, 4 times a day as they come out, all ski season, every single day. So I'm looking at thousands of model runs every season. And so when you're every single day for 17 years waking up and doing that 180 days out of the year, and you're running the models at 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. and you're going click, 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 through the models and watching the models run, watching what happens for 17 years. This week is a good example. I see this trough dropping. I see it pinching off from the trough to the north. And then I'm like, the low is going to drop and spin up into the base of that. Jet stream screaming into Southern California, not Central California. It's going to suck the low pressure probably farther south down the coast and then shoot it inland to our south. I've seen that happen and blow the forecast, 10 times over the last 17 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm just clicking through, click, 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 click. I'm like, oh, wait, back up, click, click, And so I think it's just experience too.
Yeah.
Of doing that every single day, and your eyes starts to catch things that the model's like still saying 2 feet of snow, but your eyes like, wait, this does not look right for 2 feet of snow.
Yeah.
And it happens on south winds all the time. Like the Sacramento forecasters, especially because they do the zone up to Donner Summit, and so maybe down in Blue Canyon they are going to get 3 feet of snow, but in Tahoe we're going to get 0. Because there's the south wind.
There's no spillover.
There's no wind to blow with the
south and north
to blow the moisture over the top of the mountains.
Yeah.
And so people are reading Sacramento and they're tweeting out, Sacramento, be careful driving to the Sierra. There's going to be 4 feet of snow in Blue Canyon. And then I'm like, well, I don't think there's going to be any. I think it's going to be sunny in Truckee.
Well, it's it's interesting because like in the foothill regions of the Sierra Nevada, and I can tell you for sure, like if you're familiar with Highway 49, Downeyville, Sierra City, that part, like north of Tahoe, about an hour, there are some zones like Allegheny Forest and then going up towards LaPorte. Those zones get an insane amount of snow. And what I notice on your forecasts is when I'm watching the precip forecast totals, right? North and west of Lake Tahoe by about 50 to 100 miles is where consistently the most precipitation falls. And it's like in Plumas County, right on the Plumas-Butte County line, coming down into Sierra County, west of the crest. Do you notice that? Do you pay attention to that stuff, or are you mostly paying attention to just what's going on like around Tahoe?
No, I'm looking at north to south from the Cascades that are up by Redding all the way into the northern Sierra, up where you're talking about, down all the way down to the central Sierra. And Mike is doing Mammoth at the southern end of my zone in Southern California, and him and I are chatting every morning on our company chat line. And so we're like, wait, you see this? You see this? And so we're always watching north-south, but doing it for a long time, you notice those little anomalies. And the thing I've noticed, and Joel's noticed too for the mountain regions, and Evan, that we picked up on years ago, is that the higher resolution models, the models that are basically breaking the little grid boxes that the model's trying to forecast for down smaller and smaller kilometers, down to like a 2-kilometer little box versus like a 10, 15 kilometer box. So when it's a bigger box, a lower resolution, just like your TV, a lower resolution, bigger pixels, and it's more blurry than the new ones. So it's trying to forecast over a bigger area. So in that 15 kilometer or 10 kilometer zone, that model's trying to forecast precipitation for 10,000 feet, 6,000 feet, over a couple miles from west to east.
Right.
And so it could be doing from Donner Summit to east side of Truckee in a grid box, and it's trying to average that out and figure it out because it's forecasting a generality for the larger box. And so as they develop new models, they're trying to get lower and lower resolution to like the point where we have our own model where it's GPS specific. You can get a different forecast for the bottom of the lift at Palisades, mid-mountain, the top of that lift, and then it could be different over here at the top of this lift.
Oh, wow.
So we're doing, because we're pulling in model data from all kinds of high-res and low-res models into our own proprietary model that we built a couple years ago. So we actually don't use model data. We build our own model.
What do you call your model? Does it have a name?
I don't know that it has a specific name to it.
The beard shaver.
Beard shaver. Speaking of all these models, like I'm familiar with. There's the GFS. There's the North American model. There's a Canadian model. There's a Euro model. What else am I missing?
There's the HER model, the NAMM, the Icon. Icon's the German model.
It's a German one. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you find that over 17 years, or do you find trends that like some models on particular years will like pick up on sort of what's happening and other ones won't?
So they're trying to go higher resolution, right? So they're trying to get smaller grid boxes.
Okay.
And so what we've noticed is in each of these mountainous regions is the higher resolution models way overdo precipitation amounts, or somewhat to way. So like, it'll show
like 15 days out or 10 days out, or how far out?
Even a day or two
out.
Oh, wow, really?
So I don't like to use the high resolution models for precipitation amounts. I can use them for the storm track is fine, or whatever, high and low pressure areas and stuff. But when it comes to precipitation totals that you're multiplying by snow ratios based on the temperature, it's so minute and so specific to actual snowfall. And people get pissed if you forecast 10 inches and it snows 6. Like, right. And that's such a small variable. So you got to be careful. Yeah. And what I've learned is not necessarily a specific model. People that have analyzed it say the European model historically has the best track record, but the GFS beats the European all the time. And the GFS and the European are the two that people use.
And GFS is used primarily in North America, or?
Well, it's run by the United States.
It's the U.S. government.
It's the U.S. government model. Yeah.
Got it.
Global forecasting system.
Gotcha.
So of course
that's the most accurate.
We don't use the name. We always use a name in the United States. We always use a name that's like global model. Where the Canadians call it the Canadian model.
Like
Europeans call it the European model. We don't call it the American model. You're like the global model. Global forecasting system. But anyway,
you guys need to have the OSM, Open Snow model.
Well, I call it the Open Snow model, but there's no name that we're out there like telling people, hey, we have this model, it's called this, and so we're not sharing it with anyone. It's in-house, and it's just what's tied to all our pinpoint forecasts now. But anyway, so we've just taken the model data, and what we're doing is taking the models, like you're saying, the more accurate ones, we're weighting them heavier, and we're pulling in, and we're not using some models because they're not that accurate, trying to pull in the most accurate ones, and then tweaking our formulas constantly. We just updated again the snow liquid ratio model because whenever we have AR events, it's throwing off our snowfall forecast.
Right.
But they do really well on most storms, but then an AR comes in and it's messing up completely. So, and this is happening in the Pacific Northwest and in Utah too. So we're like, how do we tweak this? And it's hard because you're in there going, okay, so what are the variables to tell our model to look for to change the way it calculates the snow ratio? So in a normal storm at 32 degrees, we want it to say 10 inches of snow to every inch of liquid that's forecast. But if it's an AR event with high winds,
it's gonna be lower.
Should we lower that to an 8-to-1 or a 7-to-1?
Right.
And what event is when the wind hits 60 miles an hour? And the precipitation rate is higher than 1 inch per hour. Are those the two variables? When those two are triggered at the same time, which is would happen in an AR, then it triggers it to lower from 10 to 7. So it's like we're constantly fine-tuning the snow model, which I don't think anyone in the world is doing that right now. They're so obsessed with skiing and snow that they built their own model, which took us forever and a lot of money, and built our own model. than sitting there as a bunch of science nerds that are skiing and going, how do we tweak this? No, look, like we forecast 10 inches and we got 8 and everyone's mad. How do we make it 10 and be perfect?
Yeah, but
we don't want to be wrong half the time.
I don't think so. One thing that like I've noticed with you is that you are really your own biggest critic, and you're super hard on yourself. And I found myself reading your forecast, and you have your over under on every resort and like how accurate you were, and you're always like, gauging how on the money you are, or how over you are, or how under you are. And it seems like you're hard on yourself when you're off. And I just say to myself, I'm like, dude, you're killing it. Like, you're more accurate than any other forecast out there. Like, if you're not dead on the money, I'm not going to be that jackass who sends you a nasty gram and say, you were 3 inches off, man. I went skiing today and you said it was going to be 10 and it was only 6. It's like, these people clearly don't understand weather.
And I think they're missing something too, in the sense that like I'm using your information more as like trends. Like,
exactly.
What am I going to be doing next week?
Correct.
Right. And like I'm not getting hung up on the like
the
a few inches here.
I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do, because it makes you better. But I'm not going to be the one criticizing you when you were a little bit off, because like you're still way more accurate than anything else that's out there.
It helps me keeping track of how far I'm off. Is helping me to fine tune how I've changed how I calculate snowfall every season for 17 years.
Yeah,
I'm always tweaking it a little bit more. And then what Joel had done is he sent out a questionnaire to all our seasonal forecasters and full-time forecasters and said, hey, can you fill this in? Like, how do you calculate snowfall? What events cause you to change your ratios? All the things we're trying to teach our model. Mm-hmm. I mean, eventually it's going to be AI, and we're going to be teaching our AI model. But we got to first teach our own model, in-house model right now, like how to think like us. We're based on our human experience as skiers and forecasters in those zones. What are we doing to tweak our forecast and make ourselves better?
Yeah.
And so that we can teach our computer that, and eventually our computer can teach the AI that. But so that helps me when I keep score. Also, I'm really upset because I'm skiing and I love snow, and I'm not happy when it doesn't snow a lot. So I'm hard on myself for my own personal reasons. And then some of it is defensive because there is subconsciously a part of me that's still like PTSD from the years where I was abused heavily in the first few years, where we're a subscription based site now. So if you're paying $30-$40 a year to abuse us, like, okay, but most people aren't wasting their money just to pay us, just to abuse us. So that's kind of gone away, but there's still a little bit of like, you raise your hand, your dog dips his head, like, I'm just kind of like, I was wrong, like, like here it comes.
Waiting for the blowback.
Just shake it off.
And so it's kind of a little bit, so it's 3 parts, probably those 3 parts, with the smallest one being a reaction from the past of like, I don't want to be wrong, because people get really upset and they're really passionate. And I don't want to ruin someone's vacation. People drop like 15-20 grand to come here for a 3-day weekend to stay at a hotel, go out to dinner, and buy ski passes and lessons for their kids, and I say it's going to snow and it rains.
That's so
it's not really my fault, but I still feel horrible.
It reminds me of, are you a fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David? Have you guys ever watched that show?
Yeah.
So did you see the episode with the weatherman, where, the weatherman for LA, wherever they live, he's also a golfer, and Larry's a golfer, and so the weatherman says, on Wednesday it's going to be rainy, it's going to rain, so, stay inside. And Larry had, tea time on Wednesday, and he's like, well, I'm not going golfing, it's going to rain. So he ends up, it's Wednesday, and it ends up being a beautiful day, and he had canceled his tea time, and he ended up going to the country club to have lunch, and sure as hell, the weatherman is teeing off, and he's like,
at his tea
you
time.
said it was gonna rain, and you're here, you liar. And he just like went all, and so I just laughed so hard, because that's how people are with weathermen. They're like, they think that you're right 100% of the time, and it's like, no, the weather, well, in that case, I think he probably pulled that maneuver, but like, it's hard to get it right all the time, every time. Like the weather, like you said, there's a quote I think I read, the weather's going to do what it's going to do.
I was frustrated with the seasonal forecast this year because the way the ocean temperatures are, we've never seen it. And
so let's talk about that for a minute.
And so the other day I was just like, I'm not even going to try seasonal forecasting this year. I'll give up. Like, it's too much of an anomaly, and everyone I'm reading out there who've been doing this a lot longer than me are like confused. And so why do we even care? We're just trying to forecast a storm a week out anyway. Like, why should I obsess and stress over what's going to happen this season?
Do you feel that there's going to be a bunch of ARs? Since you mentioned ARs.
I thought so, but so when I take the indices, the QBO, the PDO, El Nino, the ocean temperatures in the North Pacific, and all the different circulations, and I compare that back against historic seasons with similar phases of those circulations and sea surface temperatures, it just says that we're going to have a big year. But there's other things, because 15-16 was a strong El Nino this time that year. Why did we not have a big year? And so what happened? We have to go back and say, whoa, everyone was calling for a big year and it didn't happen. What happened? And so there's a lot more that controls weather in the short range that can change what should happen overall for the season in the weather pattern, and it can completely change the outcome of the season.
Things downstream of us too. I've always looked
in the Atlantic,
the Atlantic and the Greenland, the Greenland situation.
Because I didn't really see us getting. I knew we were gonna have a cold season last year, and I figured we'd get some big cold. I call them powder machines when they get those cold low pressures tracking just down the coast, just close enough to pull in Pacific moisture.
But
cold enough to
Alaska low or whatever
to get high snow rate. Like last year, the reason we had so much snow wasn't because we had an insane amount of precipitation.
It was cold.
It was so cold, and the snow ratios were so much higher than it's the highest snow ratios for the season as a whole since 1952.
Right.
And so
it was the coldest winter since 1952.
Yeah, and the coldest and snowiest, but because it was cold, it was that snowy.
Right.
It wasn't that snowy because we got the record amount of moisture, and the variance between total precipitation compared to average versus total snowfall compared to average, that variance was the biggest variance on record. So, since 1970, since I've been tracking it. So, if we didn't have the cold air, we would not have had a record season.
For snowfall.
Yeah, and I try to remember the numbers out of my head because I didn't look at them before I came here, and we just got done summer. So I haven't looked at them since last season, but if we were normally averaging, I think, like as a whole, including rain and rain-snow mixes at the Snow Lab, which is close to 7,000 feet, we average for the whole season, 7 to 8 to 1 ratio precipitation to snowfall, because some of that's rain.
Yeah.
And then the most storms are 10, 11 to 12 to 1.
Right.
And then you throw in the rain, you throw in the mixes and the warm storms, and it's 7. Let's say it's 7 to 1 for the whole season, right? For 7 inches of snow for every inch of liquid we got that season. Last season, it was double. It was 15 to 1 for the season. So without that, if you would put it at 7 to 1 with the amount of precipitation we had last year, it wasn't a record season. So
yeah, we would have been at 500 inches at the resorts or something, right?
Yeah, it would have been 450, 500, not 7 to 800.
Right.
And so it was just so darn cold. So I knew it was going to be cold like that. That I knew the storms would be cold, high snow ratio storms. I did not see those storms tracking that far off the coast, pulling in that much moisture, and then never stopping, never seeing high pressure outside of 1 week in the beginning of January, and it was just nonstop storms.
We never had a break.
Nobody forecast that, except there was one forecaster who works for us that was the closest of everyone that I saw, and he was using the Atlantic, the patterns of the Atlantic. And you think, man, it's so far down east of us. It's not really upstream of us.
It affects
and it's so far downstream of us. But it can back the pattern up across the U.S. And so...
And they had the New England had a terrible
record warm
season.
and dry year. It was terrible. Yeah. So... I never looked at the Atlantic patterns, and I still haven't put it in my calculator because I never had to. But I forecasted a slightly above average season last year. I was saying 105 to 110% in that range, or 100 to 110. So I thought it might be average to slightly above. That was what the anomalies and not the anomalies, the analogs were saying, comparing to past seasons. Mm-hmm. And so when I do that again this year, it shows a big season. Well, last season I was wrong. And I think it was because of a lot of it was because of the Atlantic. And then in 15-16 we were wrong, I think, because of the temperatures over the North Pacific, and then how the El Nino warmth moved back towards the Central Pacific and wasn't next to South America by the time we got to the heart of the winter. And so, but how do I, that's a theory, right? Because we only, how many winters in the last, we've only been keeping accurate records for 50 years.
It's 50 years.
In 50 years, we've only had maybe each year it's 3 or 4 years out of 50 that have had similar conditions. And the last time was 15 years ago. And so it's how do you say, just based on that set of 3 or 4, out of 50 that you can now forecast what's going to happen this season. It's not enough data sets.
Well, is there anything that you can learn from like the 82, 83 winter or the 96, 97 winter that were big El Nino winters, and the 82, 83 was like a back-to-back, 2 winters in a row were huge. Is there anything that you can like identify that's in common or similar?
When Mike and I really pull this apart now together, and he's really getting into it. He's like super excited. He's just been out of grad school for a few years. So he's like so new to all this. He's so excited. And he grew up like in high school, in grade school, high school. Like he started reading OpenSnow. This is how old I'm getting now and how old OpenSnow's getting. We're got kids that like
your apprentice grew up with you.
They grew up reading us as like in high school, and then they decided to go to meteorology school because they loved what we did. And now
that's cool.
Now he graduated with his master's and he works for us and he's like ecstatic. So anyway, so he's digging into this data that I've been collecting since he was in high school, and we're looking through it, and he's like, man, I'm just he's finding things that I didn't see yet. But what I've noticed is the variable that seems to push the seasons over the top a little bit. He'll say it's the QBO, the circulation over the central North Pacific, whether it's in this easterly or westerly phase. I think it's more that could be a part of it, but that can also be affected by the ocean temperatures, the rising and sinking air over colder and warmer water. And when there is colder than average water off the west coast, near the coast, it tends to push us towards, and Dr. Howard has said this before too, and I've noticed it be true most of the time when I go back and compare and watch what happens. It causes more troughs and more cold air, more storms. In California, it kind of tilts us to the higher end of the storms and snowfall with the cold water there, and then when the warm water's there, we get drier. And the RRR years you're talking about was one that also had that warm pool of water just parked off the coast for 3 seasons.
Between South America and California?
Just off the coast.
Just off the coast here.
Off the coast of the Pacific Northwest, off of California and the Pacific Northwest. And some people were like, is it the chicken or the egg? Is the high pressure causing the warm water, or is the warm water causing the high pressure? Well, when I go back and look, when it's cold water there, we get more storms, and when there's warm water, we get more high pressure and less storms. So I feel like the water.
Don't we have a cold pocket of water right now between South America, where the water is really warm, and where we are here?
Yeah, off like just south of the Baja there.
Yeah.
And so that's different than 15, 16. And we were having a cold pool forming off the west coast, because during 15, 16 we had a warm water off the coast, which what I always think leans us a little bit towards the drier side. And then we had the El Nino become a Molokai, where it's centered. So it's not feeding the circulation that's feeding the jet stream north of the equator from that rising air. So which strengthens the jet stream on the southern end in El Nino seasons. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's not feeding all the way through into the southern United States, if that's only feeding out south of Hawaii and not all the way across, because the warm water got colder off the coast.
Seems to be what's happening.
It kind of like, and it's so that is forecast to happen this season, and the water's getting warmer off the coast and colder north of Hawaii. And so I'm really into the whole sinking, rising air theories over cold water, seeing the air rise over the warmer water and the warmer air rising and then moving over the colder air, water. So then it starts sinking, right, and causing higher pressure. So, and so when the United States landmass, which holds cold air more because the ocean isn't affecting and warming, because ocean water only warms or cools a few degrees,
right?
During the seasons, it's not like the air that goes up negative 60 degrees in Montana and then it's 90 in Florida. So over the landmass, it can be a lot colder and it can change a lot faster. So when it's getting Arctic air moving down into the western United States from Canada, not being modified by the ocean, but the ocean's really warm off the coast, and you're having more of that sinking. It seems to put high pressure that just sits more often than not over California and Nevada and blocks the storms, makes them go up and around into the eastern side of the Rockies and into the central U.S., from what I've personally seen. But these are all theoretical things, right, that people fight about in the weather world. So, and then when we have the colder water, so then it in the warmer water north of Hawaii, it kind of does that farther west, allows more troughs to come farther west into the west coast. So I don't like that. I'm seeing all the warm water warming off the coast right now and getting colder off Hawaii kind of would, and then the Molokai El Nino kind of pushing us more towards a pattern that trends more towards 15, 16, when I'm like, is the storm track going to get bumped north of us this winter like it's been so far this fall?
They're getting ARs though, right?
And they're getting slammed with ARs. In 16, 17, we had a lot of ARs, but and then usually in El Nino seasons, you'll get more moisture streaming up.
But do you get seasons where AR, like the way I could be totally wrong, but like if early in the season, like right now, the Pacific Northwest is getting ARs, as the season progresses, do ARs slowly move south?
The jet stream will shift south because the jet stream is an interaction of warm and cold air. So as the days get shorter and the Arctic gets colder and that cold air sinking, which is heavier, sinking farther south, that battle line between cold and warm air rising north from the equator and dropping south from the north from the Arctic, that boundary line lowers through the winter and then makes the jet stream stronger because it clashes. There's more of that difference. So, and then the rotation of the Earth causes the jet stream to go west to east. So that interaction, it lowers farther south. So it's California's wet season is in December to February because it's the jet streams. Then in March and April it starts the weekend and rise back up. Right. So you're right, but if high pressure is there,
it blocks it.
And the storm track can just go up and over.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like the frequency of ARs has increased, or not? Like historically, or not?
Not that I've noticed. I feel statistically, like factually, non-theoretically, the swing from dry to wet years, like really wet, really snowy years like last year in 16, 17, and then really dry years like 11, 12 through 13, 14, and then 17, 18, 18, 19. And then going into really wet, the swing has been, so if you look at a snowfall graph, it used to go up and down, but now it's going way up, way down, way up, way down.
I have a friend who's an underwater mapper, and he's super scientific and into this stuff, and he has been looking at the data set from the water levels of the Lake of Tahoe, which goes back a little bit longer. Like they have it's longer than, a data set that's longer than 50 years. And one thing he mentioned to me about all that is that the wavelength, we used to be about a 25-year cycle. Okay. And it would go, up, and then, there was variations on the upside and the downside, but it was like almost a 20-year cycle. And he said that within the last 50 years that cycle's been shrinking and getting down to like almost a 5-year cycle. And there's some theories that are saying that it just keeps getting shorter and shorter and shorter. The big variability in our global patterns is creating the extremes, and that extreme is creating the wavelength of that getting shorter.
Yeah. Weather patterns have changed for forever.
Do you see that in your forecasting for 17 years of it?
I don't have a data set that's like, there's this many more ARs. So I'm just, I don't have a theory on that. Yep. I'm not a climatologist either. Weather is a study of weather in short range, so it's 2 weeks out. Yep. Climate, we kind of keep an eye on like stuff like you're saying, the trends over the seasons and what could be happening. Not climate change. We kind of stay away from that because we're not climatologists, and it gets to many people arguing. But I figured what you're saying is important for our what we're thinking is going to happen for the season. So we definitely are looking at those kind of trends. More water vapor holds more heat. The Earth's been warming. Factually, measure the temperature, no matter what your theory is. If you look at the collection of the temperatures and they're going up slightly, like it's warming, and more water vapor would trap the heat into the atmosphere and would help with that warming. So there's more water vapor available for the storms. Yeah,
that gets into Kurt's theory about Hunga Tonga.
So let's talk about some
Hunga Tonga, baby.
Do you know any volcanologists, by the way?
No, I do know weathermen who study the sun and the volcanoes and the underwater volcanoes, and I read some of their stuff. And
do you think?
Hunga Tonga.
My theory holds any water, or is it complete BS? And I'm talking out.
Volcanoes can definitely affect the weather, but from what I've read so far about Hunga Tonga is that it didn't eject as much particles to block the sun as other big eruptions. So usually the biggest effect is cooling of the Earth's temperatures.
Right, but what about water vapor though? It ejected an insane amount of water vapor into the atmosphere, which has caused this dramatic warming over the last 24 months that we've seen. Yeah, and so does the volcano ejects water vapor, and so does when you're saying that, I lost my thought on it. But yes, there's other things that can eject extra water vapor, which is trapping a lot of that heat. Those volcanoes also emit a lot of CO2. Not to go down that rabbit hole, but we could all switch to electric cars for a couple of years, and then one of those volcanoes goes off and erases what we just did. They just spew an immense amount of gases and water vapor and CO2 and all kinds of particles, toxic stuff that blocks the sun. And the reason why I bring up the Hunga Tonga thing is because if you look at the winter of 82, 1973 here, and I think it was the winter of 81, 82 also. Both those winters back to back were huge. 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted. And then in 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted, which caused all kinds of crazy weather phenomenon, including the last hurricane that ever made landfall in Maine until this summer. And so when you see things like that, for me, I just pick up like you do. You're a student of weather and studying patterns and looking at trends and things that happened in the past, and then saying, how does that apply in modern situations? Like, are we seeing those things again? And nature always has cycles and repeats itself, and so like when I see the biggest explosion in recorded history that happened under an ocean and just put like 100 Hiroshima bombs into the atmosphere, what effect does that have on global weather? And when you see things, they're like, we've never seen that, right? Like the hurricane that made landfall in San Diego.
How about the hurricane just
I was listening to you guys talk about that last week. The dramatic warming in
Acapulco, like all these things that are just
and the warm water off the coast near the El Nino along the equator too could have helped a little bit, but and then the right atmospheric conditions for a hurricane, wind patterns, and
I was going to ask you that. It seems that some of the lows that hit us last year and some of the lows in 16, 17 were extremely powerful lows that came out of the Gulf of Alaska.
Yeah.
Like, the pressure gradients of those things were basically winter hurricanes.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're seeing more of those.
Yeah. I can only just theorize with you guys.
Yeah.
So I don't want anyone to listen to this and me and it's all theoretical because there's guys a lot smarter than us, or not maybe smarter than us, but experienced and educated than us in climatology and meteorology who can't figure this out yet. That's why we can't get a forecast model to forecast snow accurately out more than 4 or 5 days. Yeah. And they've got the smartest guys in the world working on those models. Like, weather is so complex and so chaotic. I mean, basically, I describe it as like if you were to take a globe, like one of those.
Hey, hold on a sec. We got a right error on the pod player. Let me stop this. We'll pick it back up.
Okay.
I think kind of the takeaway is it seems that there may be an effect, but people just don't know exactly what it is, and maybe not enough people are talking about it.
I was about to describe how the atmosphere is liquid that is just shaken up and spun like a globe, and how you were going to predict that, how that's going to interact. So that was what I was about to say.
Cool.
So you can understand it.
Let's bring it back to that. Let's bring it back to that.
There.
Hopefully this fucker works. Okay, so let's go back to, we got interrupted with a little glitch in our system, but let's talk a little bit about the volcanic effect. So we talked about Hunga Tonga, and we talked about atmospheric, explain, you just had a great analogy. Explain to us what these kind of volcanic events can create for the planet.
Well, so there's volcanoes under the ocean. That's what you're talking about too.
Yeah.
And so there's some meteorologists that are looking at the Ring of Fire in the Pacific and saying that, it's very active right now, and that could be warming the water underneath, and warmer than average seawater can emit more CO2 and water vapor, which could be contributing as well to global temperatures continuing to warm. So,
right.
But one of the weird things that kind of makes what they're saying have some merit is that usually, you'll see some warming, especially during the summer in the North Pacific, and then once the storms get going and the winds are blowing across from west to east across with the storms, it'll upwell cold water, and you get pools of cold water. Well, we've already had some strong storms hitting Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, Canada, and the water's getting warmer off the Pacific Northwest in the last couple of weeks. And it's so the warm water is deeper. The air can only warm the top of the surface of the water. It can't warm very deep.
Right.
So most people listening, you go swimming in a lake in the summer, the top is warm, and then you dive down a few feet, and it gives you a brain freeze.
Right.
Because the summer air temperature can't warm all the way to the bottom, or it takes a long time. So how is the warmer water in the ocean going so far down? It can't just be from the air. So their theory is it's the volcanoes are helping, and then it's blowing that warmer water that goes deeper from west to east with the storms, and that's why it's blowing warm water all over in the North Pacific. So it's one thing to have an El Nino like we have right now, which is warmer along the equator, but usually it's cooler to the north, and there's big cold pockets and warm pockets in the North Pacific. You look at a map right now, the whole North Pacific almost is warm, above average.
Right.
So they're just like, why is there so much warm water and it goes so deep? So maybe, Hunga Tonga and other volcanoes, which would add to water vapor, but nobody knows, like, who was here the last time this happened 1,000 or a million years ago.
Right.
We don't know.
How does that change the weather? Our models only know what was input by scientists based on what they've observed over the last 50 years, not what they observed 2,000 years ago. So
we're looking at the outer three rings of the Sherman, sequoia tree.
Yeah. So how do we know how to forecast the weather for next week for a snowstorm based on what's happening? And so all we can do is just try to guess based on historical patterns, but then say this looks different than anything we've seen, and then be like, oh, maybe it'll do the same thing as those historical averages, but since this is kind of a new thing, it could go the complete opposite way. And that's kind of why I raised the white flag this week and was like, I'm not even going to touch the seasonal stuff this year.
So is this the first time you've decided to not do seasonal because you just don't know really what's going to happen based on all the craziness that's been going on with weather patterns and stuff this year?
I mean, my analog says big season, and I'm like, I'm scared to say that because of 15-16. I wasn't saying it in 15-16, but I was thinking that it might not be because of the warm pool. That the RRR was preceding that 15-16 El Nino.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, that's still there. And just because it's a strong El Nino, I don't trust that ridge that's been parked over that warm water for 3 seasons. And then the storm track was hitting the Pacific Northwest that winter, not Southern California like it should have been.
Like this year. You're not buying into the, oh, shoot.
I
love this clip.
He was setting it up, and then he didn't have it plugged in.
Oh. You good?
Yeah.
Here we go.
I am El Nino. Tropical storms must bow before.
Oh yeah, it's tough. It's tough to get so psyched on these El Ninos, and then
those of you who don't,
don't go down.
Especially in Northern California where we're at. So Tahoe's on the northern side of the Sierra. Mammoth and south is more the southern half of California, and so El Nino correlates more with above average Mammoth south. And
correct.
La Nina is the Cascades.
Right.
Well, the northern Sierra is in between the two.
We could get because I've seen big snow years during El Nino. I've seen no snow years during El Nino, and then the same with La Nina. We're kind of in that intermediate zone where we could get skunked or we could get slammed.
And we lean slightly higher snowfall in La Nina, and most people that live in California think La Nina is dry.
Right.
But in the northern Sierra leans slightly higher in snowfall La Nina. And part of that is the cold air.
Yeah.
And specifically, because we have below average precipitation seasons with above average snowfall because of the higher snow ratio in the cold La Nina storms.
Right.
So there's the weird little anomalies like that can happen as well. So
I'm not a complete crackpot with my Hunga Tonga theory.
No,
just a half crackpot.
I read meteorologists in their private blogs and forums and stuff. They talk about Hunga Tonga and the Ring of Fire and all the other things that can cause extra water vapor. Like, they want to know too. They don't want to be wrong. They want to know how all this stuff happening globally with temperatures and water vapor and volcanoes could affect the forecast, because they don't want it to mess up their computer models they're trying to fine tune. But I always describe it like, so if you have a globe, remember back in school, you had that cardboard blue globe of the world, and you just go up to it and spin it real fast, and see how fast you could spin it. Well, so if you were to take that globe and then you were to add glass around it, about like a half an inch outside of it, so there was a hollow area around it, and then fill that with water and gold glitter, and then spin that globe as fast as you can, right? So all that water just starts spinning around the globe, and then and then the glitter, which will end up being probably in these like strands. Consider those like cold fronts or moisture or storms.
Yeah.
And then that thing's just spinning real fast, and you're like, that strand of gold is going to go from Japan and it's going to hit Southern California. Wait, no, it's going to hit Washington. No, it's going to hit Oregon. Like, that's what we're trying to do. The atmosphere and the weather is in the clouds, and all the weather that's happening. Our atmosphere is just water vapor, and it's just all of this moisture that's just spinning around this globe. It's spinning super fast, and we're sitting here on this huge globe. So when you back out, that's spinning like that. That's a good analogy for how weather is. And then you wonder why these guys are so smart. They've been studying weather for all these years. All these scientists can't get a model to forecast right a week out. It's that complex. And so when people get mad if you miss a forecast for Palisades and you say it's going to snow a foot and it snows 3 inches, the storm hit, Mount Shasta. Okay, so you look on a map of Northern California, Mount Shasta looks really far from Tahoe. And so you're like, man, how could you mess that up? It hit there, but it didn't make it to Tahoe. You suck. Now you back out to that globe.
Yeah.
And you're spinning that globe.
Right. It came in. It just came in a little north.
So that distance between Mount Shasta and Tahoe is a pencil drop.
Right.
And those storms spinning around the globe, and you're trying to nail the forecast for that pencil. Where the pencil hits on California from that thing coming flying around the spinning globe and spinning up, with the rising and sinking air and these fronts forming and these vorticities spinning in the troughs, and you're just trying to guess where they're going to go and how much precipitation, and then you throw in the factor of the mountains, and mountains create lift just like rising air creates lift. Like when warm air is rising, right? And that's creating lift, and the cold air sucking in the bottom, it's causing low pressure and it's causing storms. But like mountains they create the same effect that cold and warm air do. So the storm comes in, the mountain forces the air to rise. You don't need warm air to rise on the mountain. You just need the air to blow across the mountain. It forces it up like rising air would do. And that's why sometimes it rains and snows over the mountains, but it's sunny in Sac, sunny in Reno. So
I find it interesting that mathematics has become kind of the standard for which weather is forecasted these days. And, these are like a lot of meteorologists or climatologists, they're like crazy math whizzes, right? Like they went to school for advanced math computation or whatever, because that's what all the models are, just numbers based. It's math, but
it's statistics. It's
statistics and stuff. But I feel like there's still, like you're saying, understanding patterns, understanding the way things move, there's fluid dynamics, there's all these things that I think go beyond just numbers and mathematics. And I look at the National Weather Service and their forecasting, that's mathematics based. But then I look at your forecasting, that's observationally based by just experience and studying models and studying history and other people who've been doing it before you.
And looking upstream and downstream.
Yeah.
Being like, well, there's this ridge anchored over the northeast. There's no way that trough's going to exit that fast and or that ridge is going to move off of us that fast and allow storms in. It's going to hit the back of that and fall apart. I don't believe it. Whenever we have a long dry spell for 2 or 3 weeks and it forecasts a big storm, I'm always like, nope, no way. It takes 2 storms to break it down. It just doesn't disappear overnight. So a strong storm will hit it, weekend, we'll get a few inches, not a few feet. That clears the way for the next storm to boom, hit with 3 feet.
Right.
And so I don't care if the model's saying 3 feet. There's no way I'm going to believe it unless it's consistently every model for many days right up to before the storm hits. And then I'll be like, oh, okay.
So there's still art. What I loved, what my takeaway from all of this, and it's heartening to hear, is that there's still art in this weather forecasting profession. The computer isn't going to replace you, because there are things, unless you teach the computer and then the computer teaches the bot, and then we're all
a super AI might be smarter than us.
Yeah, no,
I'm hoping, because I think it's going to cure a lot of incurable diseases. So that part I'm excited about. But
and I'm not excited. I'm not generally not. I'd rather just have you doing your forecast.
I don't want to read a weather blog from AI.
No, I don't either.
Well, we're planning to give it our so the scary thing.
So the takeaway I'm getting from what we're talking about tonight with models and mathematics and these, forecasts that are numbers based, is that there's still art in forecasting, observational art, like what you do, right? You observe trends, you observe patterns, history, experience. It matters, and in a lot of cases, especially when you're trying to be accurate, it's better than just relying on a numbers based model
that changes every run every day, because then you'll be constantly changing your forecast, and I hate that. And that's why I use averages all the time too. And I do see Weather Service trying to do that more with statistical models. They're like, it's a 10% chance of a foot of snow here and a 50% chance over 2 feet. And they kind of do this whole statistical thing now, which kind of tries to erase some of that swings.
Yeah.
But I'm reading as much as I can get my hands on. Anyone who's writing blogs, writing out theories. These meteorologists are putting out these theories that have been doing 30, 40, 50 years of meteorology in the West, especially West Coast or the U.S., and they're writing these theories of hey, I went to meteorology school and I use the models as well, but using my experience, and here's some theories I could come up with. that haven't been fully accepted officially by the science community, and they're not being taught in college. But here's some theories I've applied that seem to work well, and then I'm taking those and applying them against the California winter season weather and seeing how I can use them or if they apply. And I found ones that seem to really apply well over the last 17 seasons. And so I'm adding my experience plus these theories that seem to work and not using the ones that don't seem to work, and mixing them in with the models and then using averages as well. And the combination of all that is what I use. I don't know. People can say I'm more accurate sometimes than other people, but I'm just doing me. I'm not trying to be more accurate than anyone else. I'm just doing me, trying to be my best and not be wrong. And using as many tools as I can grab my hands on to do it. And so it's a lot of fun.
Well, you're the man. Like I got you do an amazing job. I know you're really hard on yourself, but you're as accurate as it gets in my eyes anyway. Like when I need to know what's going to happen, I read BA's forecast, and
it puts me on the POW.
That's right.
It does.
It's Pow Bot approved.
Yeah, and I get excited now because I'm fast now. Like if you just got graduated, this year, and then you're coming and you're like, hey, I'm going to be your day off guy. I'm like, all right, here's what I do. The guy would be there for 6 hours, 7 hours, and I'm boom 2-3 hours because I've been doing it for so long now. I do it every single day all season, and I can sit down and just digest.
And you still love it?
And it became work, especially when I was working 2 jobs. It can come. And last season, like when I'm getting into April and May, and it's still going, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna be burned out. I haven't slept all winter.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself. So like right now, this time of year, like today, I drove around the lake. I visited ski areas, picked up my passes, got some ski gear for my kids. Ate lunch in Truckee, and I'm just like, okay, this is exciting. I work in the ski industry. Like, that's an exciting thing. Like, I'm going to ski a lot of these mountains, use this new ski gear. I live in a beautiful place. Mm-hmm. I have to, like, remind myself sometimes. But no, I'm never not excited when I'm on the trail skiing in thigh-deep powder and hooting and hollering with my friends. I never forget in that moment.
You're still into the chase.
Yeah, but when I'm sitting there doing the forecast and it takes me till 9, 10 a.m. and then I'm exhausted because I've been up since super early in the morning getting that forecast out, and then I look and the I-80's crawling up to the mountains, and I'm like, do I really want to go chase powder today? Like, I'm really tired already, and now I got to go drive in that traffic and deal with that. So there's that too. But once you're up there and in it, you're like, oh, what an idiot. Why would I even question sitting in that traffic to do this right now?
Yeah, well, some days I've live in, like, because you live in Northwest Reno. You used to live in the Core Lord. This Core Lord Court, we call it, because Sam's right there. We had on Sam Hamilton. We had on early on in the show, who's an old friend of yours.
Marco Osborne.
Marco Osborne's
Sam,
over here.
who like pretty much saved my life one time in the backcountry.
He's a Core Lord just like you, and people who live down here, I feel like in the last couple of years with I-80, I have gotten better at knowing when to not bother. Like there's some mornings you get up, you look at the road, you look at like the freeway is backed up, and and like Gold Ranch is a complete parking lot, and there's trucks going sideways and people are trying to back out of a bush, and you're like, nope, I'm just gonna stay put this morning. It's just
I'll
not
get up
worth
at
it.
3 and drive up to there, and I'll sit in front of the lodge like at Sugar Bowl or Palisades or Northstar. I'll get somewhere where I know I can get a Wi-Fi signal.
That's what you got to do. You got to get up really early.
Write your forecast from the parking lot.
I'll write the forecast from my car or else I know I couldn't get there.
You couldn't get there. Yeah.
If I wait till 7, 8 in the morning, I'm not getting there. I have to go at 3.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you on that, dude. Are there any webcams that are your favorites for chasing POW and staying in tune with what's happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Sugar Bowl's always been one of my favorites because those tables really can show you
the table,
and that's at the base, right. So
it's only gravy.
It's funny you say that because I was curious if that was that, because that's one of mine. I always check that one.
That's a good one.
And I also check the some of the weather station. I like DRI's weather station on Mount Rose. That one tells me a lot of information if I get out of bed or not. Like if it's below freezing up there, I'm like, all right, I'm
you can check Mount Rose I check a lot of cams when I'm trying to figure out where the snow level is. When snow levels are fluctuating between 7,000 to 9,000 feet in a storm, how do you know where it's sitting at that current moment? You got to check out all these webcams, the top of Heavenly Road's really high, or top of Kirkwood, or top of Rose, and you're like, where is the snow level? And then you're trying to find it on the cam where it's white, where that white strip is. So I use it for that. the base of Palisades is different than the base of Sugar Bowl. Base of Sugar Bowl has a ton of terrain, and your base of Palisades is like, there's not much there. You basically have to go up the cable car. So whatever's happening at the base doesn't affect your skiing very much. What's happening at mid and upper mountains is really what's affecting your skiing there. So it's just knowing which cams.
The base of Alpine is a little bit higher than the base of Palisades.
Yeah. It's like the village at Northstar. That's not going to affect your skiing at Northstar. Like, no one skis down there in the village. You're all skiing up the top. So
consistently, inch for inch, where does it snow the most in Tahoe?
It snows the most northwest of the lake. That's where it catches most of the snow. Sometimes Kirkwood, because it sticks farther west. But the farther west you are, and the higher you are, you're gonna lift those clouds that the mountain lift. Mm-hmm. So the moisture is gonna hit that mountain, get lifted. So the air's already rising and causing clouds and causing precipitation. So it's raining over Sacramento, and then it just gets extra lifted. That orographic effect of the mountains, and it squeezes out. And then when the clouds clear the crest and come over the lake or over Reno, they start to sink and warm, and they can hold more moisture, and they've already lost some moisture. So everything that's high and west is going to usually get the most unless it's a inside slider. And then in super warm years, like we were talking about it, I think, over text the other day, but there was that really warm season, like 16, 17 had a ton of ARs, really warm storms. Mm-hmm. And I believe Sugar Bowl had 780 inches that year, and Mount Rose
15 inches of rain on top of it, right?
And then Mount Rose was 760. But I think they were back and forth. There was weeks where Mount Rose was actually ahead of Sugar Bowl, which is not normal because they're on the east side of the lake where the clouds are drier.
Well, that year, Sugar Bowl had something like 750, 800 inches of snow with 15 inches of rain.
Right.
So, like, if that would have been all snow, they'd have been over 1,000 inches of snow.
That was one year definitely where the precipitation outpaced the snow.
Yeah.
As a percentage of average, opposite of last year.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, Bryan, it's been awesome jiving with you.
Thanks for coming and nerding out on weather. It's been so good.
Yeah, we've just been nerding out. Hopefully our listeners nerd out on weather as much as we all do, but I think there have been some really cool insights. And but there's one thing we're going to put you on the spot, as we do with all of our listeners when we have a guest on. The name of our podcast is Mind the Track. And at the end of each show, we like to ask our guests, when you hear the term mind the track, what do you think of? What comes to mind? You can take a minute, because I know maybe I don't know if you mountain bike or ride single track or anything, but like maybe in a ski reference, or even in a forecasting, what you do with snow and weather, like when you hear mind the track, like what do you think about?
I think it's important in all those sports. I just think, for me, it's super frustrating when I'm a snowboarder, right? So flat areas suck.
Yeah.
Right? And so when someone's laid a track and someone goes a cart across it or gets off their board and walks in it, and then now you're stuck, and now you're post-holing behind them, like, thanks, buddy. Like, that would say mind the track. Like, stay on the track. What are you doing? Or get off to the side and let me come through and blow past you. But, yeah.
I think Pow Bot would appreciate that.
I appreciate that one. That's why I wax every day. So that'll never happen to me.
Well, Bryan, where can people, aside obviously from OpenSnow, the Tahoe forecast on OpenSnow, where can people find you if you're on social media or anything else like that? So
earlier you asked me, do I still call them blogs? I do, but the official name that we've coined is Daily Snows.
Okay.
Your daily dose of snow, right? So the Tahoe Daily Snow, I post on there. I do the I-80 Daily Snow every morning, and then I do a Palisades Tahoe Daily Snow, which is specific to that mountain's weather, which can be different than other mountains, even though they're all pretty close around this area. And then I post a lot on X, formerly Twitter. So I've gotten rid of all my other social media, but the reason I stayed on X is because it's so heavy with, it was always more of a nerdy of all the social media, and there's a lot of scientists on there and a lot of meteorologists on there, and I see a lot from them, and I post a lot about it, so it's a lot of more interaction of scientists and weather stuff on there.
Interesting.
And I've got a big following in there, so I post updates there, and everything else you get from me is a subscription to OpenSnow now, because we 2 years ago became a subscription site, and currently for a single season is $29, which is
worth every single dollar, man.
Yeah,
worth every dollar.
It's only $2 and something change a month, and for $29, think about all the other things you're buying for your ski season. $29 is the cheapest thing you're going to buy all season.
You know, I'll admit that I held out for a little while. I was like, oh man, I got to get the subscription, and then I stopped reading, and then I was like, what the hell am I doing? doing? It's $30 a year to read like the best forecasting for the stuff I love to do. It's a no-brainer. Just do it.
And we've dumped out so much new technology with that revenue. We just dump it all back in with all the new maps and features and pinpoint forecasts now and our own weather models and more in the pipeline, tons more stuff coming. And that's all being supported by, and we use a lot of the recommendations of our subscribers' feedback, like, hey, you should do this, you should do this. It's constantly in our chat every day. Hey, this guy just wrote in, he said we should do this. That's interesting.
Yeah, so
let's talk on the next meeting.
How can people reach out and chat with you then?
Hello@opensnow.com.
Okay.
Like, we share that in a Slack channel, and we'll comment on it, and so people will give all the time. Like, some guy wrote in about snowmaking. He must work at one of the ski areas, and he's one of the snowmakers, and we were talking about wet bulb, and we had an article we just wrote about wet bulb and how it affects snowmaking. He's like, your number's a little bit off. It's actually better to make snow at this wet bulb temperature versus this one. And Joel wrote to when our forecaster wrote the article, he goes, go in and change the numbers to what he said, because he's the expert on snowmaking. So we listen to people, and we add features based on what people are asking for using their subscription money. So you're in direct control, and you're not going to get any ads in your face anymore. And you're just like a part of our team. And when we launch a forum, that'll be even more fun, because then you can be part of the family and talk. We'll probably be in there talking with you guys too. So.
Awesome.
Well, I'm going to keep reading, because I want to get off the white ribbon of death.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Pray for snow.
Yeah.
We had 50 inches as of today last year, and so far this year we've got about 6. So
we're still mountain biking.
Are you holding out? Are you? I mean, I know you're not going to make a season prediction, but
I will predict. The season predictions I have put out is that El Niños typically don't start till mid to late December for the heaviest snowfall, and then they go later, like to end of April into early May. There are usually also warmer storms, more ARs, more warm storms coming from the south. They don't have the cold Arctic trajectory, so we're going to have snow level issues. More than we did last year for sure.
Yes.
But yeah, that's my two predictions.
That's not surprising.
So we're in the first inning.
So it's early. Yeah, it's not uncommon to have below average snowfall in October, November, and El Nino, and then it picks up in December.
Right. Okay.
It's all about how you finish.
It's all about how you finish, man.
Yeah.
I'm okay with slow starts as long as we finish with a bang.
No, a lot of people, I mean, the ski resorts definitely care, because and the apparel companies and everyone who sells stuff pre-season is like, just early season pass sales is the most important thing.
Right.
But for locals, we're like, we don't really need a lot of snow till after Christmas when all the crowds leave.
Exactly.
I do like skiing early. I like it when we have early December, though, because the sun angle's low.
Yeah,
we haven't been hit with there's not too many people up here.
But I wait till 3 2-footers is my rule before I go off trail.
Yep.
Because I don't want to ruin my equipment.
We talked about this last episode.
I remember.
Do we go early or do you wait? I wait, man. Yeah.
I wait. I don't like to buy new boards every year because I'm ruining them in the rocks. Yeah.
All right, Bryan. Well, thanks again, man.
Buddy.
It's been a blast catching up with you and getting to know you better and learning about all the weather.
Yeah, thanks for everything you do. I mean, in the backcountry world, in my world, like we rely on your forecasts a lot.
Yeah.
It's a part of our daily intake of information, and our lives depend on it. So thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thanks everyone for listening to episode number 25 with Bryan Allegretto, aka BA, here on Mind the Track. And until next time, get out there, get deep, and put your mind in the track.
Sweet.
Cool, that was fun.
Heck yeah, Bryan.
Glad we
That was sweet.
sorted that one
out
with the device. Thanks.
Yeah.